Okay, welcome guys. We're going to be dealing tonight with footwork as it pertains to Krav Maga. And we're going to deal with some of the fundamentals, nothing too complicated. And what I'm hoping to get across tonight are some of the footsteps or stepping systems that we take from other martial arts and from other fighting systems. Krav Maga did not evolve in a vacuum. It was a synthesis, a conglomerate of different martial arts from all over the world over thousands of years that, kind of came together. A few select individuals picked different systems, notably boxing, jiu-jitsu, stick fighting and wrestling. And out of that they came up with the, can I call it the traditional or the system of Krav Maga that is maybe a little more basic than the modern day evolved version. What I'm going to do is start out tonight by pointing out one or two things that will make it easier for you to move and easier to fight and defend yourself, and also put you in a position where just by using good footwork you can become a lot more difficult to hit and generate a lot more power in your strikes and your evasions. So when you attend your first Krav Maga class, or second or third or thereabouts, they start teaching you how to actually stand. And the advice we give beginners is very, very simple. We say to people, keep your feet about shoulder width apart and about the same distance front to back. So in other words, it's literally as though you're taking a small step forward and stopping right there. Your front toes are pointing straight forward. Your back toes are pointing slightly out, maybe anywhere between 20 and 40 degrees. It's not important, just a comfortable position. And from there, the most important thing, of course, is for the basic Krav Maga ready stance. We bend the knees a little bit, you go into a crouch, and the rest of the body adapts. The shoulders come up slightly, the hands come up to protect yourself. And the weight goes from your heels, which you would do if you were standing straight, to the balls of your feet. So the balls of the feet just behind the big toes. I'm not saying stand on tiptoe, have the heel of the foot still in contact with the ground, but the majority of your weight is on the balls of the feet. And the reason we do that is to activate the calf muscles. It does several things. From a beginner point of view, just the basics of standing. By standing that way, you are springy. You're able to move instantly in any direction. It gives you agility. One of the things that you often hear about in boxing circles and martial arts circles is don't get caught flat-footed. And if you look at boxing matches, you can see a boxer who gets hit hard in the face, is maybe stunned. What happens is his hands come down, his knees straighten, and he rocks back onto his heels. It's nature's way of trying to find equilibrium once we're dizzy or injured. And that's a fatal place to be in a fight, because once you're on your heels, you can't actually move quickly in any direction. To move, you've got to rock your weight back onto your toes and then move. And it makes it very, very difficult. So as far as possible, we develop the habit of being on the balls of the feet like that. And I would say in terms of weight distribution, typically for a beginner, you want to have about 60 to 70% of your weight on the front leg with 30 to 40% on the back leg. So that you're assuming a forward posture which looks predatorial. You're not evenly balanced. You're not going for a Sunday stroll like this. You're leaning in slightly like that. So your posture reflects readiness. It reflects the ability to move forward or spring backward. Now, in terms of moving from that basic position, it's very, very simple. We know that whatever direction we move in, that foot moves first. So if I want to move forward from here, logically my front foot moves first. So it's just like lengthening my stride and taking a slightly bigger step, like that, and shuffling backward and forward. By the same token, if I move backward, my back foot moves back, I go toe to heel, and I just slide the front foot in a bit, maintaining the same posture. If I move to my left, then my left foot moves first. We often see beginners get confused because all they want to do is move and their feet don't know what to do. So you see things like cross steps where beginners do this. They move this leg and then this one, and they're off balance and they're wobbly. And the best way to get around that is just to remember that whichever direction you move that foot or that side foot first. So if I'm stepping left, the left foot moves first. I just simply slide it out and the right foot follows. If I want to step to my right, then my right leg moves first and the left foot follows, and so on. And the easiest way to practice this, if you're a beginner and you just want to try it out, is to take a little bit of masking tape or string or whatever and put it on the floor and do a kind of a plus sign in front of you, or a compass if you like, north, south, east, west, however you want to do it. Just make a cross on the floor so that you can practice moving forward, backward, side to side like that. And maintain your equilibrium, maintain your posture and your balance as you do so. Of course, we understand that in Krav Maga, we don't like moving backward, if at all possible. If someone is attacking me and I move backward, he can run forward more quickly than I can run backward. And so it puts me in an awkward position where from here, if I'm trying to backpedal, he can run me down and knock me off balance. I'm being defensive. So we vastly prefer, from the very get-go, when we teach people, we say to them, try not to move backward in a straight line. If you do have to move back in the face of an attack or a grab or a weapon or whatever it is, then instead of moving straight back, now we add another dimension. As well as going forward, backward, side to side, we now start thinking in terms of 45 degrees that way, 45 degrees that way, and that way. So take your plus sign and put an X or a multiplication sign over that. So you now have 8 directions like a compass. And as we step, obviously if we move straight forward, then we just move forward. But if we're moving backward to evade an attack or to parry, then instead of stepping straight back, what I want to practice is, for example, if I want to move that way, I take my back foot and I put it out at 45 degrees. So I'm not retreating straight, I'm retreating off like that. Now, as I retreat, I don't stay facing the same direction for a very simple reason. If somebody's coming at me from where you are standing and I sidestep like this, then I'm off balance. They're somewhere over here where I can't deal with them. And I'm going to talk about the turning step in a minute, which is a way of moving from here and adjusting the body by turning the hip and allowing the foot to slide a bit. By the same token, if I need to step off that way, then what I'm going to do is move my left foot, and the right foot, instead of just coming in, it swings back slightly. It inscribes a kind of little arc, almost like a compass behind me, so that I'm stepping to the side and swinging. Or I'm stepping to the side and swinging like that. So that puts me in a position where if somebody is coming toward me, I automatically don't go backward. I'm able to track them through my center line as I move, adjust my weight effortlessly, and keep my feet in the same position the whole way through. In some traditional martial arts, notably if you look at martial arts like Muay Thai, they actually train their fighters to move and step by taking a short length of broomstick, and they cut it about 50 or 60 centimeters in length, and they actually tie a piece to each ankle. So there's no possibility of someone cross-stepping or moving their feet closer together or further apart. There are no exaggerated stances. And they go through rounds and rounds of boxing drills where they simply teach them to move with their feet tied together with a length of broomstick, so that they get used to that idea of almost shuffling and sliding on the toes, the balls of the feet. And it's a very good exercise to do. So once you've got that concept in your mind, first of all the concept of the compass, and you can think of it any way you like, north, south, east, west, whatever it is, or just think of 8 directions. It also means that it opens up different avenues of attack for us as well. We know that if I move straight forward to attack somebody and do something, if I'm fast enough, I can usually catch him. But he also knows that I'm right here. So very often as you move, as you do something, an opponent may throw something at you. Even if he reflexively reacts to what you're doing and just puts his hands out, or kicks or pushes, or he's holding a weapon and you move toward him and he does that, you could be in a position where he accidentally stabs you or hits you. So one of our central concepts in our 16 principles of Krav Maga is a concept we call step around the ball. And I'll put that up on the screen of the video so you guys can also see it afterward. So step around the ball very simply means that instead of stepping straight forward, I always pretend that there is a beach ball or a Swiss ball between me and my opponent. And as I step forward, what I want to do is take my front foot around the ball. So it's a slight ellipse. It's like stepping around the ball literally and doing that. And by doing that, notice where my center line shifts. I'm no longer directly in front of my opponent. As I step, I'm already off-stepping or side-stepping, turning my body so that I'm less likely to get hit or, tagged. Even if I've hit him first, he may reflexively hit back, even though he can't see where I am. And I want to be out of his way as I move from there and around. The most striking example and basic example for beginners of stepping around the ball is when we do disarms. You guys know that when we do, for example, a hook and lock gun disarm, we never ever step straight in and try and take the wrist in order to hook the arm. We always step around where the gun is. If the gun's pointing at me, I step around, I do this. And that's a classical example of stepping around the ball. Now we can use that in a self-defense situation where we're kind of free fighting and moving around as well. And there are a few reasons for that, but the primary one is to get off the line of attack. The line of attack is not always a real tangible thing where, you know, I'm being attacked. The line of attack is where the opponent perceives me to be. If he remembers that I'm here and something happens quickly and I've moved, he's going to react to this point. But if I do something and step off like that, it puts me in a position where by the time he reacts, I'm no longer there, I'm here. That's very simplistic, but it gets the idea across. And to be able to do that, we need to be light on the balls of our feet. Knees are always, always bent. We never straighten our legs as far as possible, because as soon as you straighten your leg, you lose springiness, so you're unable to move, you're rooted to the spot. And there's also very real danger in a sense of combat that somebody could kick your knee and badly injure it or snap it backward. And against someone who's experienced and maybe knows what they're doing, you never ever want to present them with a straight front leg, or any leg for that matter, because then they can kick it and break it. So by putting pressure on the leg and bending the knees, it also renders us more stable against people kicking us. If somebody kicks your leg or tries to sweep your leg out from underneath you, there's a massive difference in stability between standing straight-legged, where you just get swept and fall over, and being in a crouching position where you can absorb the impact, roll with it, or just stop it dead. It also allows me, if I see someone trying to kick or sweep, because my knees are bent, it's easy to spring forward. And if you move forward into somebody who's trying to kick you or sweep you, it takes away 50% of the power of their kick, or their attempt, for that matter. So as a beginner, those are the basics. Feet shoulder width apart, about the same distance front to back, crouching in the balls of the toes, knees bent at all times, and hands up at all times. Then we move from there. What do we do apart from that? What other stances are there? What other ways of walking or moving are there? In the beginning, we teach beginners preferably not to step through. In other words, when we're moving forward, don't switch stance. Don't go from, left leg in front, for example, to right leg in front. Because in that moment of transition, as you walk through, there's a moment where your feet are together and you're very vulnerable to losing balance, being slipping, being kicked, pushed, hit, whatever it is. So in the beginning, we recommend keep that stance the whole way, no matter what you're doing, and come back to it. If you're going to throw a kick with the front foot, bang, you throw the kick with the front foot and it comes back to the front. If you're going to throw a kick with the back foot from there, or there, or whatever you're going to do, it comes back to your default set position from there. But there comes a point when you move past the beginner basics where you learn to step through and where you learn to switch feet. And I'm going to talk about that tonight. So for the sake of you guys watching, there may be some who are total beginners and are completely new to this, and there may be others who are more experienced and can move around quite easily. And I'm going to address both. For the beginners, if you are starting out, then my advice is practice this stance and movement in this stance religiously, back and forth, side to side, until it becomes so easy that it's like, do it in your sleep. Okay. Once you've got a handle on that and you can do it easily and maintain your balance and your stability, then we start looking at other stances or other transitions, should I say. And to do that, let's have a look at the traditional martial arts, because in those martial arts we see all kinds of exaggerated stances, don't we? We see the karate guys do these long stances like this, where one knee is in front and the body's low and the back leg's straight, and they're doing this kind of thing. You see the kung fu guys doing a similar thing, and they take these exaggerated, horse stances where they sit down like this and punch like that. We see, again, coming back to Japanese martial arts, we see what they call a cat stance, where all the weight is on the back leg and the front leg is bent, and it's kind of that kind of ballet stance. And we tend to laugh at those things, but they're actually highly practical. They do have application, but we have to understand when to apply them and how to adapt them for Krav Maga. Because if we try and do them in the traditional sense, if I'm facing somebody on the street who's a thug, who's a criminal, and I suddenly do this, he's going to kick me right in the nuts, plain and simple. It's like I'm inviting him, please kick me in the groin. So we don't do that. When do we use something like a horse stance? Can you guys come up with anything? Think about applications. Here's one application. I'm being held at gunpoint or knife point. I step around, I do a hook, lock, and what do I do then? I step out and I sit down. And in that position, I'm standing exactly the same way that a traditional kung fu guy stands. The difference though is that I'm not standing facing somebody where he's going to kick me in the groin. So application and context play a huge role. You've got to be, smart enough to understand that the guy on the street is not going to play fair. He's very often going to aim for your groin, he's going to aim for your knees if he kicks. And most of all, he's going to be trying to hit you in the face, possibly all at the same time. One of the problems with set stances, in other words, these long stances and horse stances and cat stances, is that once you assume a stance, you're rooted to the spot. It's very easy, as soon as you go into a set stance, for someone to rush into you. And we need to be aware of that. So for us, a set stance, any one of those, is not a stance, it's a transition. And from the transition, we always come back to our light but rooted floating stance, our T-Rex. Now if we look at practical combative martial arts, and I'm talking about things like Muay Thai, for example, where they actually kick each other and actually hit each other and are not doing fancy things, you'll notice that they don't do any of those things. They don't do this, they don't do that. Why not? Because they understand very, very intimately that the moment you do that, someone's going to kick you right off your feet. So they stick to the stance. Now the difference between what we do and what Muay Thai does, for example, is that we place most of our weight on the front foot. In Muay Thai, they place most of their weight on the back foot. So I'm just going to switch my stance here so you can see what I'm doing. It looks very much like what we do. And what they do really well is they disguise their weight distribution. So a guy who does Muay Thai will look as though he's got his weight on his front foot. But at any point he can pick that foot up and kick you away, or push you away, or whatever he's going to do. And they do that for another reason, because obviously in Muay Thai people kick your legs. And they don't want their legs to get hit, so they need to have a leg free to check the incoming kick. So they keep a lot of weight on the back leg and they kind of shuffle and keep that leg mobile and loose as they move from there. And there comes a point in our training and in our sparring where it's good to know these things, because you can experiment. You can go from the standard, let's call it the Krav Maga crouch, okay? Where you can go from the Krav Maga crouch to shifting weight onto your back leg. It looks almost the same. There's just a subtle difference in weight. And I may be setting this up, for example, to kick somebody in the groin. How do they apply that practically to self-defense? The answer is, if I'm standing facing somebody and they're threatening me and I realize I need to strike first in order to get out of there alive, I can use my hands, or I may choose to use my foot. So if I shift my foot back slightly so that it's not a threatening stance, and I bend my knees just a little bit, I'm now just disguising my crouch. And from there it's very easy to whip the front foot up, because I've shifted weight onto the back leg without losing balance and without losing stability. I'm not doing this, because that's going to clue the guy into the fact that I'm about to kick. It's a subtle shift of weight. In the beginning, when we do formula movements, in other words, learning disarms, learning counters to chokes and holds and grabs, and that kind of thing, we learn step by step, typically 1, 2, 3, clear, control, counter. And so, again, to come back to a disarm, we'll do, a hook and lock, where we go from a neutral position like that to stepping in, and now we're in a high side stance, we hook, we go into a low side stance, we pull the other guy down, we twist around, and look what happens when we take the gun away using the hook. Notice the stance that I'm in. This is a typical long karate stance. If you look at it from the side, it looks like that. And that's exactly what we're doing. So those positions that we see in the traditional martial arts that look so unrealistic, at certain points they're of great value to us. We need to shift into them, and we need to understand where they fit in. Like I said, if I've stepped in, I'm just going to do this from the side. I've stepped in, I've done a hook, I've grabbed the guy's gun and his arm, I pull him off balance, and I sit down. There's a horse stance. Now I need to rotate that way. What do? I turn that foot out, I take a little step, and I throw my shoulder. And to do that, I need to have a relatively straight back leg and a nicely bent front leg in order to accomplish that. The thing is though, I don't stay there. I don't take the gun out and work here. In our system we come back to the default. So I may use that transition, but the moment I have the gun, this back foot is already traveling in, so that I can push him away, change hands, work with the firearm, and come back to the default, which is that springy position. So those are the, just a brief overlook or overview of the mechanics. And the mechanics of stepping are no different to walking. If we look at the classic literature on fighting, and I'm going to use Miyamoto Musashi here, who wrote the book of 5 Rings. You might or might not have heard of him. Famous Japanese swordsman who was never beaten in his life and wrote a brilliant book on strategy, which is still used today as a business manual. Miyamoto Musashi said the way you walk should be no different to the way you fight. And for us that's equally true. We don't go from walking to suddenly doing some exaggerated kind of fighting stance. The other reason why we steer clear, just a quick sidebar here guys, the other reason why we steer clear of formulaic stances is because many of those are designed to work against one opponent. If you go into a karate tournament, you know that the guy you're going to be sparring against or fighting against is in front of you, and there's one of him, and there's a referee. So then it makes sense to stand like this with a long exaggerated stance, so you're really strong in one direction. But what if I'm in the middle of civil unrest or I'm being attacked by 3 people? It makes no sense for me to lengthen my stance like this, because to the guy in front of me I'm tremendously strong. But if somebody pushes me from this side, I lose my balance immediately. Not to mention the fact that my groin is open. So that's why we come back to simple crouch right there, where we can move and work all the time. So let's take a moment and talk about transition. How do we move from one position to another? The basic thing we learn as a beginner is just a simple shuffle. One leg moves, the other leg catches up. One leg moves, the other leg catches up. And that's easy enough. But beyond that, are there other ways of moving? Are there other ways of using your feet? Yes, there are. And there are hundreds, I think, probably maybe more. But I'm going to pick out 2 or 3 tonight that you can practice, try for yourself, and just see how they feel.